Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Gratuity. I'm your host, Darin. Thank you for everyone who's reached out, gotten in touch, dropped us a line. If you want to get involved or share a story, please email us at gratuity@tastemade.com. If you've ever been to Austin, you've probably had burger and fries at Pete Terry's, so you're absolutely honored to be joined by the founder, Patrick Terry, and their CEO, Todd Coerver, on today's episode. They talk about how Austin has adjusted to the pandemic, also how they have adjusted their business, and how they are working within the community to provide delicious treats and how to feed the people on the front line. It's a really inspiring episode, and we are so excited to share it with you. So please sit back and enjoy some Gratuity. Patrick, Todd, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Thank you for sitting down with us on Gratuity.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So, a lot of national attention has been focused, especially with the restaurant industry, on the coasts, DC, New York, LA, Seattle, because it was such an early hit city. But I'd love to have some insights on what Austin and Texas as a whole has been going through, especially with the restaurants during the pandemic.
Todd, why don't you take that one?
Okay. Obviously we're like everyone, we're sort of in I guess this is week 5 of the New World Order. And it's been a wave of changes. And I'm sure that's how it's played out with most cities around the country, probably just on slightly different timelines based on local and state decisions being made along the way, right? So, we started off that first week of, dealing with the virus and sort of trying to understand what that's going to mean to businesses. And then by week 2, we made the decision ourselves, actually about a day before Austin made the decision as a city to close our dining rooms. Just felt like the right thing to do, felt like that was the direction things were headed, to really try to contain this thing and really minimize our interaction, as people out there in the retail world. So we made that choice and started adapting very quickly, just like everyone else out there, and trying to be nimble but yet be smart and thoughtful about what we're doing. So we, made that decision that second week, and then quickly, we're learning week to week and made adjustments on a weekly basis. We started to trim back some of the hours of operations based on, where certain day parts were starting to slow down as people were sheltering in place. And then the formal shelter in place order came down, a few weeks ago, and we've been living in that world ever since. And, it's been really hard on Austin, because Austin was really built on the culture of Austin, and Patrick can speak more to this than I can, has really been built on the smaller mom and pop independent operators, not just in the restaurant world, but in retail in general. That's what makes Austin, so yeah. It's been painful to watch, and we feel very fortunate as a small Austin-based chain that we've been able to hang in there, primarily because of our drive-through business. That we were sort of we were unknowingly set up for this moment to try to brave it as best we could, and having drive-throughs and the benefit of delivery partners through folks like DoorDash. We were able to kind of pivot that direction, lean into that direction, and keep going. But boy, it's been tragic to watch a lot of our brethren out there suffering that just don't have a drive-through or have some of those tools in their tool belt to turn to keep the business going. And it's been tough to watch, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, this is, the company, Pete Terry's, has been around since 2005, and obviously there has been some crisis that has affected everyone on a national level and also on a local level. 2008 recession, the floods of last year. Patrick, how is this different? How is this crisis different than the ones that you have weathered before?
It's like nothing else. I think this is the headline. Partly because of the quick, almost devastation to so many places, and as Todd says, our brethren in all of this, how fast it came upon us, and then frankly not knowing when it ends. I think that may be even harder. Todd spoke very well about how we had to adapt and change. And, it was almost inconceivable for a company that prides itself on cleanliness, sanitary conditions, safety first, to have to look at a way to ratchet it up yet again.
Right. Another level.
To another level. And then not to get ahead of yourself. When this started, the idea that we would be wearing face masks and greeting a customer was something that none of us were going to go near, because it was too far, right? It was too uncomfortable. It was too outside the norm. But today, all of our employees are wearing face masks, and it's nothing less is expected of them. So where Todd has been so good on this the last 4 or 5 weeks is staying just ahead of the curve, but not getting too far out ahead. And that's a really tricky thing to do and not easy to do. But it's important, because if you're too far out, like I say, then a customer is looking and going, why is that person wearing a face mask?
Right.
And if you're a day behind, where the hell is your face mask?
Right.
And so you really have to adjust to that and just always be a little bit ahead. And we've been fortunate to do that. But to answer your original question, this is like nothing else, just because really we just don't know when it ends or how it ends.
Or if it's going to end before there's a vaccine, and then if it doesn't end, what does that shift mean?
Right.
You did mention about Todd getting out there and being adaptable. And one of the things that I know a lot of people in the industry saw was this LinkedIn post that you put up that was really just some early day guidance. And it's interesting to do that because, that is, the internet never forgets. And so like, you're going to put a message out there and you're either, it's a fine line, right? But people are looking for guidance and people are looking for advice. And now 5 weeks later, looking back on what you shared, it still is relevant. And you did thread a needle that is tough to thread. So what made you want to get out there and give advice? And then can you share some of the advice that you put up there? And is there anything that you would go back and change or adjust or add now that we are, a few weeks away from when this started?
Yeah, sure. So that was week 1 when I shared that post on LinkedIn. And I think, it's funny, I rarely, if ever, post on LinkedIn, period. And, but something struck me about that moment in that first week of going through this completely new reality that was kind of washing over us very quickly, as Patrick described. And I guess I felt compelled. I guess I had a sense that this has got to be what everyone's feeling, right? Everyone's kind of wandering the desert right now in search of answers and guidance. And so I thought, well, maybe if we just started sharing ideas, sharing experiences, sharing feelings on how we're approaching this moment, maybe something could come from that. And I started to see people get out there and share some of their experiences. And so I thought I would do the same based on what we were collectively doing as a leadership team here at P. Terry's. And the reason I felt comfortable doing it, to your point, knowing that that could be old, dated information a week later, right?
Yep.
And that people are going to hold your feet to it. The reason I felt comfortable saying what I said was really, it was rooted in, that statement was all rooted in just leaning into who you've always been. And so I felt like the message was somewhat timeless because all I was talking about and referring to was P. Terry's continuing to be who P. Terry's is, and us searching for what would P. Terry's do in this moment, and how we stay true to ourselves as a brand and as a culture for our employees and an experience for our guests. And said, what's the natural, that's what we talk about around the table here as a group, is what's the natural extension of who we are to properly address this moment. And that's what we decided was going to be our decision filter. What Patrick and Kathy started 15 years ago was rooted in a single word, and it was simplicity. And so we said, let's not overthink this. Let's follow our heart equally to our heads on just making the right logical decision around how to address this moment while keeping the business simple, because that's kind of what we've been famous for all these years.
You know, the fast food business is highly competitive, and there is constant advertising and constant pushing of a messaging and reacting to trends and things like this. And one of the things I really liked about your post was that maybe this isn't the time for that. Like, maybe this is the time that as the stretches on, it's just be quiet, put your money where your mouth is, and just do the job and do what you feel is right, but you don't have to trump. And I thought that was a really interesting approach, because I think when people look back, they will see what companies did and judge them by their actions and remember that for a while. But how long does that stretch on? Like, how long does it stretch on where you think it's just going to be no marketing, no advertising, no push like that? Or is it just, as you've seen with some national brands or other chains, they definitely have their pandemic commercials that are already out?
Yep. Yeah. And, seeing those, it's just weird to see this new sea of sameness get created around messaging against the pandemic moment. You almost want to yell, we get it. We all know where we're sitting right now. We're all in this together. You don't have to keep playing it back to us, from an advertising standpoint, which is why I think it is important to kind of just be quiet right now. We all know what's going on. We don't have to over talk about it with each other through advertising and marketing. It's also important not to, it's easy to start getting desperate too in your marketing and advertising. Sure. By offering, buy one, get ones and things of that nature that sort of reveal the desperation of the moment. So for me, none of that really works, quite honestly. And to me, what works is what's always worked for P. Terry's, and that is just staying true to who you are and just really continuing to reveal the character of your brand and culture in everything you do, whether it's trying to do the right thing for your employees, trying to get out there and give back to the community like we've been doing with our food truck, feeding healthcare workers, feeding food bank workers, etc. It's just picking those moments to say, what would P. Terry's, how do we just continue to be P. Terry's in this moment? But in terms of, when's the right time to start sort of turning back on marketing, I think we're getting pretty close. And I think it's all a judgment call of, this does feel like a new normal now that's not going away anytime soon. It's not new anymore, right. This moment that we're in, we're all sort of, unfortunately, we're all getting comfortable with it. And to me, that's the gauge of when now how do we go back and start to market the business in a way that starts to feel more routine, right, to people. And you know what, we got to keep our foot on the pedal to some degree to continue growing our business. It's just going to be in a new direction and with a slightly new twist to it, given the circumstances, but we got to keep building our business. And I think the guest is still looking for new news, new things to get excited about. So, right. Give them that where you can. And I think that's what we're focused on right now, is preparing for that moment.
Now, there's a article that came out about a month ago that talked about how you were able to avoid major layoffs and keep the majority of your staff in place. How does being a restaurant chain allow you to be, I don't know if nimble is the right word, but what are the benefits of being having multiple locations and being a larger business than, say, a singular restaurant? What flexibility do you have? And are there any also disadvantages of also being a restaurant of that size, of having so many locations?
I think we're actually in a great spot from a size standpoint, because we're small enough to be nimble and large enough to be stable through this moment, right? To be a single independent operator of one location, very difficult, right? You have nothing to kind of lean back on. There's no foundation there to kind of prop you up to get you through this moment financially, with your employees. You're kind of on an island, I'm sure, is what it feels like to most. And guess what? I think it's almost equally hard to be a large brand too in this moment, because as a large brand with a lot of infrastructure comes a lot of layers, right? And you're looking for ways to cut cost because you know the top line sales aren't there. And so it's easy to cut out some of those middle layers from a layoff perspective and tighten your belt and just say, we're going to get through this with some of those layers not there.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those larger companies are having to do that, face that moment. As a company our size, we're not big enough to have layers, but we're bigger than a one unit, a one location operation. So I feel like we're actually in a really good spot to try to weather this storm.
Yeah. How have you been reacting to the CARES Act, the PPP Act? They just even today announced another round of funding of the PPP Act. Are you working with the federal government at all? Is that something that you feel that you have access to, or is it what some chains are finding or some other restaurants are finding that those funds are not available and that you are having to look towards the community to really help you get through this time?
We've been working through that. The PPP has been a good program for us that we're tapping into, and it's really been facilitated by our bank that we already have a lending relationship with, and they have been great partners of ours in really sort of shepherding us through that process, and helping facilitate movement and getting traction and getting a response. So we feel fortunate that we've got a good banking partner that's helping guide us through that process.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have that type of partner. It's good to have that type of relationship. But I don't think there's a silver bullet here, is there?
No, there's not. I mean, I think we're all working at every angle we can to just kind of hold on, right, and get to the other side of this, whatever that looks like. But yeah, there's certainly not a silver bullet, a single, bullet to this whole thing in terms of the solution.
Of course. The other thing that comes with having multiple locations is the amount of food and ingredients and having a good, strong supply chain. Now, we haven't really seen a ton of disruption yet, at least on a major level. Maybe some of the consumer products might be harder to find, like 5-pound bags of flour, eggs, things like that. But on a commercial level, there seems to be a lot of food that's available for that type of supply chain. But there are chances that there could be disruptions down the road. You see people who are sick in meat processing facilities and things like that. So how are you adjusting, or how are you planning for that, especially since you need to have X amount of food on a larger level to make sure that you have a consistent menu? Are you adapting the menu? Are you thinking about adapting the menu? Are you just also resigned to the fact that if you can't get beef or pork or potatoes or something, that you can be flexible in what you give to your customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're fortunate that we have not had to confront that challenge yet, but it is certainly on the forefront of our minds, as we work through this and we read the news every day and hear about these plant closures, due to the virus making appearance in some of these plants around the country. Fortunately, that has not affected our supply chain yet, but we are actively having conversations with our key suppliers, like our beef supplier and our potato suppliers, as well as our distribution partner that plays that middleman role of getting the groceries to our back door every day. We just had a conference call with their leadership team yesterday, our distribution partner. Last week I had a conversation with our beef supplier. So really it's just about staying in close contact and sort of seeing, understanding what are they seeing on the horizon.
Sure.
Where are they seeing threats or possible risks to the supply chain? We've had a few little product shortages here and there at the distribution level that we've been able to navigate around. So it's really about them on our behalf staying really flexible and sourcing goods from, the same goods from multiple suppliers. So you've got some backups that you can turn to. But at this point in time, we feel very fortunate that we've not had an interruption yet, and we feel good about that.
I mean, that's good, because there is a community that holds P. Terry's in high regard and loves the food and sees it as, if not every meal, then maybe something that's a treat, something that's all natural and affordable during this time. And in the official statement, in the response to the pandemic, you talk about this responsibility to the community. I'd love for you to expand on your feelings about that and the importance of of the community to P. Terry's, both as an institution, but also a business?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things, again, that Patrick and I and the leadership team, we talk a lot about, and that is there's a couple of sort of obligations we feel. One, first and foremost, is our employees, right? Is that our team that relies on us for a paycheck every week. So, so that's our first priority. It's like, how do we keep as many people employed as possible and getting as many hours as possible, knowing, we had to cut people's hours. It was just, the nature of what we were dealing with. But we have found most of our folks are, happy to have a job and are very understanding of their hours being cut. And so that's really been priority one, is we got to be there for our employees. And it's the reason we opened a restaurant in March during COVID. We opened a restaurant. We opened a second restaurant this week in April, and we're going to open another restaurant next month in May here in Austin, because we understand the value of pressing forward, being that reliable, dependable brand here in the market, but also being an employer, right? We got people depending on us for jobs. There's jobs disappearing left and right now in the restaurant business here in Austin, just like everywhere else. So if we can do our small part, where we're signing up 50 to 75 people to our roster per restaurant opening, that's 50 to 75 people that maybe didn't have a job yesterday. So that's our first obligation. And then beyond that, it's how do we take care of our guests and our community through some of those giving back events. So that's kind of the three, crew, customer, and community is the 3 C's of our business that we try to look at and make sure we're taking care of, especially in this dark hour.
I mean, that's got to be a tough decision, right? And a tightrope, because people might look at expansion as, a good thing, especially if you're getting a job, but people might also be like, it's not appropriate to be opening new and pushing forward a business as possible. How do you balance that messaging? How do you balance that decision?
With the 3 that we just talked about that were sort of already in the pipeline, right? They were already under construction. We'd already committed to them from a capital standpoint and just from a emotional business strategy perspective. And, we had a lot of conversation around, do we press forward on those openings? And we kind of quickly arrived at the answer, yes, for those reasons I just described, that it gives our employees hope and optimism. It gives new employees the chance to get a job and a paycheck. And our guests, welcome us coming to their neighborhoods as that added level of comfort, So I think it provides a glimmer of normalcy during a very abnormal time. And so for us, we haven't hesitated.
I think it's also important that, we don't ever dance on anybody's grave, and there's no hooping and hollering. But as Todd says, in the middle of all of these restaurant workers being laid off, we're able to hire 150 people. In opening these 3 locations. I would argue that those 150 people would tell you that that's a really good thing.
Sure.
And I think also, to Todd's point, the one thing that I think people are looking for as they're stuck at home or not being able to do their normal routine is they're looking for something that's normal, something that they can rely on, that they've had in the past. And having a P. Terry's open up in their neighborhood, allowing them that convenience of being able to swing by and grab a burger and fries, I think it is a very, very small part, but nonetheless a part of trying to bring something to people that they can be comfortable with. And that's not so easy today.
No, it's not. I mean, I know that those types of meals, the pizzas, the burgers, the fries, the fried chickens, the comfort food, the things that, that I probably couldn't make at home or wouldn't make at home, or I'm desiring a flavor of something that I love that maybe I took for granted before this all happened, means a lot more during these times.
And also, I think, we're very conscious Todd's a master at this, at protecting our brand and being and never being too far out in front of our skis. And so, I think it was the first week that we were in the middle of this, the second week, no later than the second week, that we took 30 of our employees to the food bank. We donated our time, we donated their time, and we paid them their hourly wage to go make that, to donate that time. At the same time, we were feeding volunteers at the food bank or at Seton Hospital, or, there is this sense of balance, as Todd said, that where you are juggling three balls. You're juggling your employees, your crew, you're juggling your customers, and you're juggling your community. And the trick is to keep all three in the air. And so what we've done by that expansion is one of those balls remains in the air while we're doing the other things that create those other two balls in the air. I think I think we've achieved a nice balance in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have seen the charity work, and I think a lot of people have in Austin that you guys have done, partnering with Austin FC, working with St. David's healthcare facilities, and
Right.
Not every company has to or even can do that during this time. Putting up food, feeding the front lines. What continues to go into your decision to feed those people? And do you have more things in the work where you're going to keep feeding people who are on the front line?
Well, there's always this, this balance that you have to achieve. We talk about taking care of the mothership, which is this business, which allows us to do all of those good things. And if you get too far out in front of one thing, then you have, a potential of damaging the other. Todd can speak to this better than I can, but I would say that, this is the kind of thing we look on a daily or weekly basis. How long will this go on? How long will our business be affected? So that we're not too far out in what we're doing and how we're helping out.
Great. So, as this stretches on, but we also start seeing some, I don't want to say normal because there's no normal anymore, or the new situation, and people start to understand, like, this is what we're going through. Do you see a silver lining here? Do you see a way that the community and Austin or the nation comes out stronger on the other side of this pandemic?
I'll speak to that first, and I'm sure Patrick has thoughts on it as well. I said this a few weeks back in a local interview here. Someone asked, what are you seeing different that maybe surprises you? And for me, it was just the elevated level of civility that you're seeing, just at a very basic human level. It's been really nice to see that sort of deferential courtesy to your fellow human being out there, and putting other people first before yourself, and thinking that way, not only as an individual, but as a good corporate citizen, leading with that idea rather than it being sort of an afterthought. I think that's been a really nice, sort of pleasant outcome from this that you really hope has some staying power once we settle in.
I think that's exactly right. I think there's going to be some good things that will come of this that we don't even realize right now. I think that, in the end, usually as a people, we come out of these things a little bit better, hopefully a little bit wiser, and a little more careful. Maybe that's just where we come. We've slowed down just a notch to be a little bit more careful in everything we do on a daily basis.
Yes, and I think people maybe take burger and fries or a meal out a little less for granted when they have it, because I know that I will never look at having a meal out again without being thankful for having the ability to do so.
Absolutely.
If people want to follow along with what P. Terry's is doing, or see where they can help donate or see if they can work with you for some more feedings, where can people go to get in touch or follow along?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. Obviously, following along with what we're doing, our social channels, on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. We stay very active day to day and just talking about what's going on, talking about what we're doing, how we're giving back, who we're partnering with. That information is readily available if you follow us on our social channels. And then if you visit us at pterrys.com, there's a community giving page where you can go in and reach out to us if you want to partner with us or have an idea about how maybe we could partner to do something good in the community together.
That's amazing. Well, Patrick, Todd, thank you so much. Thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you for, serving up burgers and fries and food to the people who need it and to the people who want it. And I can't wait to get back down to Austin to have a burger with you guys. I'm like,
Thanks.
waiting,
We love that.
waiting
Anytime.
for that. Yeah. Have a great day. Stay safe. And thank you again for taking the time to sit down with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Darin. Take care.
My pleasure.
Patrick and Todd, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us today. We really appreciate it. If you want to follow along with what P Terriers is up to, or you want to get involved with some of their charity work, we've listed some links in the description below. If you want to get in touch with us, please drop us a line at gratuity@tastemade.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.